Welcome to Coach's Corner, everybody. I'm your host, Coach Tripp, alongside my friend, Coach Mark Hobley.
Peace.
We're here with a special guest, friend of ours, Phil Quigley, down at the bottom of the screen. Quiggs, thanks for joining the show. And we have Kent Stock. Just met Kent, but Kent's an amazing story. Kent, I want to thank you for joining the Coach's Corner podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to sit and share with you guys and just tell a few stories.
Oh, my gosh. Your journey from Little League to Hollywood. I got so many questions. Watched the movie that was made of your final season in Norway, Tigers High School, little small town, Norway, Iowa. For the people that haven't seen the movie or read your book, Heading for Home, it's a great, great book. Kent, I like the movie, but I love the book.
Yeah, my little story on that. The movie's 75% true, 25% Hollywood embellishment. The book is 100% true. So how can you not like the book better?
Oh my gosh. Let's start from the beginning, Kent. Talk about your mom and dad and your grandpa Lee, who you were close to, and of course Gene, you were close to. Talk about growing up and your love of baseball at an early age.
Gosh, you just gave me goosebumps when you mentioned my mom and dad, my grandpa Lee, and Gene Shepers. Gene Shepers was a neighbor of my dad. My dad got married at 20 years old, and within a year, he had my sister at 21 years old, 22 years old. And my dad was he was a preacher's kid. And he was number 2 out of 5. And when he got out of high school, basically it was, you need to move out. And so he moved to about 60 miles to Des Moines, Iowa, and got a job at Firestone working third shift. And he met a man that was probably about 4 years older than him, Gene Shepers. He was a lifelong bachelor. Dad bought a house about 3 doors down from him. So Gene ended up becoming my second dad through my whole life. I think my mom and dad weren't blessed with a lot of money when I was a kid. And I think Gene bought my first baseball glove, my first bat. He was at every little league game. He just a mentor and role model to me, but my mom and dad were, probably the greatest influence on me and my life. Love to tell you that they're both living today. They're 87 years old,
Wow.
live 2 hours away from me. They don't get far from home anymore, but I tell you what, they have more spunk than anybody that I know. And I talk to them once a week and just to check in, and they grow me like a podcast. We talk for an hour on the phone and they just, what's your week been like and everything like that. So great role models. But my mom, she was the oldest of 6 kids living on a farm in small town, north central Iowa. And her parents, my grandparents, Grandpa and Grandma Lee, they were young when they had her. And then 13 years later, they had 6 kids on the farm. My mom was kind of like the mother to her 5 siblings, because Grandma was out on the farm, working the farm with Grandpa. And at about age 55, my grandpa just said, you know what, I can't, farming's hard on my body. And he said they sold the farm, didn't allow any of the kids to buy it. He didn't want them to have to work the hard life like he had. And so he sold it, moved to town, Story City, Iowa, which was about 35 minutes away from where I was born and raised in Ankeny. And my grandpa and grandma were at every little league game. They were at even when I got into high school, grandpa and grandma would show up in some, Division III small school town, and there they were to watch their oldest grandson, to play baseball. So I was blessed with a ton of great mentors.
Wow. Yeah. The champions and mentors in everybody's life that we all are so thankful for, especially later on in life, for getting us where we are. What an amazing story. How far is Ankeny from Norway? And I know you started teaching and coaching after you got out of college, and then you were teaching girls volleyball. So tell our audience about the transition from volleyball and how you actually were at Belgrade for 4 years, 5 years?
Oh,
and how you got to Norway High School, which was how far away?
Well, it's people that hear me speak. I do public speaking across the country. They say, Kent, you're really good at making a short story long. So, born and raised, my goal in life, and my parents will confirm this, is that my goal in life was to be a Major League Baseball player. Bob Gibson was my favorite player, pitcher number 45 for the St. Louis Cardinals. And I remember my dad taking me to my very first professional baseball game in St. Louis, and Bob Gibson was a pitcher. I was 10 years old, 1971, and Bob Gibson won his 200th game that night. And I tell you what, I was in heaven, So I'm sitting there thinking, hey, this is awesome. In 10 years, I'm going to be playing in this stadium. I'm going to be Bob Gibson's shortstop, and so Dal Maxwell ended up playing it instead of me. But, so I had that goal. I get through high school. My parents they supported my love. They supported my dream, but they always told me, said, Kent, you need an alternative plan. Well, I got to my senior year in high school, didn't focus on that alternative plan very much, and I wasn't drafted. And so the first time, I went to Waldorf Junior College in Forest City, Iowa. We were ranked 13th in the nation, great junior college. And so after that, I thought, well, I'll get drafted after 2 years at junior college. And
add a lead or add a contact.
I didn't get drafted.
Broker or something.
I didn't get drafted to play pro baseball. And so for the first time in my life, I made an educationally sound decision. I wanted to transfer to Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, a Division III school, had good baseball, but I transferred there with not the best attitude. You as coaches, you probably have had players like me before that I transferred in. Number one, that year, I'd lost my dream of being drafted to play professional baseball. And number two, Gene Sheffers that I talked about earlier, he had passed away that summer of cancer. So I transferred into Luther, not with the best attitude. And that first semester I was there, made some poor decisions. I didn't know that you had to go to class to pass them. I kind of ended up spending some time. Yeah. So, got through the first semester. I come home from Christmas. And my mom, Sean Astin played me in the movie, and he also played Rudy. So to use a Rudy phrase, my mom is 5'0" 100 nothing, and she gets a letter in the mail, and she grabs me by the arm and sits me on the couch, and she says, Kent, you've lost everything you've ever loved. You're academically ineligible to play baseball at Luther College. Yeah. And I just told her, I said, Mom, I'm a loser. I'm a failure. But probably the most important words ever shared with me. She said, Kent, as your words, you're a failure. She said, failure isn't final. You have a decision to make. You can move back home with Dad and me. We'll help you find a job, and that's okay. Or you can get back to Luther College and get your grades up and become a teacher and a coach. At that point, she didn't say get your grades up so you can play baseball. It was more about you going to be a good human being. So fast forward, I played baseball at Luther my senior year, first team all conference shortstop, had a great year. And my grandpa Lee passed away that year, but I think I was more mature through that process with him than I was with losing Gene 2 years prior. But then I graduated Luther, and I thought I need to find that first teaching job. And the old football coach, and some of you, I don't know if any of you have heard of Coach Ed Thomas from Parkersburg, Iowa. He was murdered by one of his former football players. And he was on the interview team, first job, Parkersburg. They didn't offer me the job, but they were looking for a high school, boys basketball coach. And I wanted to be baseball. So they offered it to a veteran, somebody that had been coaching for 5 years. But a coincidence, he had a best friend that was high school principal in Belle Plaine, Iowa. And he called him and he said, Bob, you need to hire this kid from Luther College. So off I go to Belle Plaine, Iowa, town of about 2,500 people, go through the interview. I go back home after the interview with my mom and dad, and I get the phone call from the superintendent. He says, Kent, we'd like to offer you the high school business ed teaching position. We also have some coaching. how would you like to be our junior high girls volleyball coach? I thought, you got to be kidding me. I want baseball. But I had my mom and dad in the background saying, take the job. You need to move out of the house. You need to start making some money. So I knew nothing about volleyball, but I studied the sport, watched videos, ended up building up a really good team. We were ranked top 10 in the state. And fall of 1989, we were going to play the winner of Norway and Mount Vernon, Iowa for the district championship. And they were playing on a Tuesday night. So I thought, I'm driving over to Norway, Iowa to scout this match so that we can have our first district championship 2 nights later. Well, I walked into the Norway gym. You've all seen the movie Hoosiers. The movie Hoosiers, you think of that basketball gym, that was Norway, Iowa. You know, town of 586 people is all small little Hoosiers type gym. And I saw a man up in the corner. I knew who it was. It was the legendary Norway baseball coach, Jim Vanskoy. You know, the town of 586 people, they'd won 18 state baseball championships in 23 years. And so I sat about 5 feet away from him. But as the volleyball match went on, I started sliding closer and closer to him. And with sweaty hands and my stomach tied knots, I finally reached out and I said, Coach Vanskoy, I'm Kent Stock from Belle Plaine. We ended up talking the whole night, and he was telling me about his longtime assistant coach who just resigned from baseball, and he was looking for a new assistant coach. And again, my hands all sweaty. I said, Coach Vanskoy, would you ever accept an application from a guy from Belle Plaine? And he goes, absolutely, all rough and gruff. He says, send a letter to my athletic director. And I said, well, who's your athletic director? He goes, me, Jim Vanskoy. Yeah, so
that's how you got there. That's how you got 1 season under him. And talk about that season, that state title season. And because you guys, that high school is just amazing. You've had Hal Trotsky, hitting star for Cleveland and White Sox in the 30s. Mike Boddicker, of course, the World Series title of Baltimore. And then you had Bruce Kim, who caught for Bird Fidrich. You've had some great players, and I think I saw at the end of the movie, half of the kids would go on to play college baseball.
It's unbelievable.
From that school.
There's no way to tell the story about that town and what it is about that town. But one thing I do share is they had 4 sports, only 4 sports in high school for the boys. They had fall baseball, basketball, spring baseball, and summer baseball. So they lived, eat, and died baseball. But, they had 20 professional baseball players back in the day, 3 that made it to the majors, but 20 that were actually drafted and played in some Class A up to AAA. It was just in the water.
Tell the story about learning under Jim Vanskoy and about celebrating the championship game, which caught me by surprise because, and I'd win a big game as a coach. I just go nuts. But to talk about a little bit. Yeah, we can't mention every. And folks, you got to read this book, Heading for Home. It's an amazing story of perseverance in a small town. And Coach Vanskoy was very upset. They covered it at length in the movie, and you touched on it in the book. Coach was really upset that they were combining with Madison County. And talk about those last 2 years, the 2 state titles. Last 2 titles.
Well, that year that I was his assistant, I learned more from him about being a good person and being a mentor and a role model than I did about baseball. He has a plethora of knowledge of baseball, don't get me wrong, but I learned about being a good person, good human being, and being good to kids. He was rough and gruff, and Powers Booth does a great job of playing in the movie, but he's a teddy bear at heart. I one-on-ones with him. But we went on. We won their 19th state championship that summer. And me as this kid coach, I'm sitting in the dugout. We get the final out, and I'm ready to storm out onto the field and celebrate with the team on the pitcher's mound. And he just sticks his arm out like that and stops me. And he says, "This is for the kids, not us. This is about them, not us." And that tells you a lot. You see. You guys watch sports all over. I watch more sports than ever. And you see a lot of coaches that it's about me type of coaches. They run the sidelines, do this and that. That wasn't him. It was about the boys. It was about those we had 14 kids on the team, and that was 8th grade through 12th grade. We had 8th graders on the team. It was about those 14 boys. It had nothing to do with Coach Vanscoy and about me. And I learned a lot from that. It helped me become a better volleyball coach as I kept coaching volleyball, helped me in that next year when, they merged the school together. He was very outspoken, and he had an opportunity to go be the Class A pitching coach for the Detroit Tigers. And he said, Kent, would you take this team in their final season? Because they were closing down the school at the end of the year. And so obviously I took that team, and I was so nervous. I remember the first meeting I had with the team, they were all boys that I knew from the year before, but I sat at the chalkboard, back in the days with chalkboards. And I said, guys, let's set some goals. And the room went quiet. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm failing at my first ever team meeting with the guys. Nobody said anything. All of a sudden, my center fielder, he raises his hand. He goes, Coach, we only have one goal, and that's to win Norway's 20th and final state championship. You talk about pressure. I felt that pressure.
Oh
and
my gosh. Yeah. How is that? What is that like? Because I was lucky or fortunate enough to be in Alabama during a transition from Coach Brian to Perkins, and to follow a legend. It takes a certain amount of courage and confidence. Talk about that talk about that pressure that you had.
I have to be 100% honest. The pressure was internally, because the community, they just wrapped their arms around this team, and they knew me from the year before, but they were more involved in the town hall meetings and the anger and angst going on in the community of merging and closing down this legendary school, that they kind of left us alone. But me internally, as competitive as I am, excuse me, I felt that pressure. But one thing I can say is that as the season went on, it almost became a respite to get out on the practice field, because there was so much angst and animosity in the town, that getting to the baseball field, the boys just felt a peace, and I felt a peace going out there and practicing. And it sounds easy, that like it's easy. We won 20 state championships in 25 years. It's not that easy. So when they set that goal, to win the 20th, I thought, oh my gosh, this is pressure. But
all right, so talk about that last season. Your season as the first head coach here, and the last season of the school, going for 20. You finished the regular season 25-12, and every school in Iowa qualifies for the state tournament. So talk about, you could talk about all the great players, that you had, from Kyle Schmidt to Brad to Sean Moss. Talk about that year and that game.
Yeah, so you're right. There were 3 classes: Class A, Class 1A, and Class 1A, 2A, and 3A. So 3 classes is all back then, and everybody qualifies, but only 4 get to go to the actual final state championship. So, where you go, everybody makes it to districts, but it's only 4 teams in each class make it to the state tournament. But everybody has a chance, and our record was 25-12. It sounds like it's a really good record, but there's not many Norway teams that ever lost double-digit games throughout the year. But one of the things that was cool is that Coach Vanscoy didn't care, if they had 8, 9, 10 losses, because we were 1A playing with, we had 14 kids on the team, 8th grade through 12th grade. We were playing the Cedar Rapids Jefferson teams, the Des Moines teams. He just built a schedule of all these large schools teams, so that when it got to tournament time, we were playing our same class teams. We were very well prepared. So we made it to the state championship game, which was awesome. And I get to, when we won that game, to go to the state championship game, I kind of felt a peace, like, if we don't win this championship, I know at least we made it to the state championship. We get to that state championship game. Sean Moss, what a stud. I mean, he was just amazing. Jimmy Walter pitching too. And we get to the last inning, the 7th inning. We were the visiting team, and we were down 4-3 with 2 outs, 2 strikes, and nobody on base. And my first baseman, Kyle Schmidt, was at the plate. I'm at the third base coaching box, just pacing, going, what am I going to say to these guys? If he gets the 3rd out. Well, I found out in his state tournament history of like 4 years, he had struck out like 18 times. Next thing I know, he hits
wasn't he 0 for 13? Wasn't he 0 for 13
yes.
in the state tournament?
Yes. And so he hits a double to left center field. And so I put a pinch runner. He was one of those Pete Alonso type first baseman, little wide body, not very fast. So I put an 8th grader in to pinch run for him at second base. And my next batter steps up, 2 outs, 2 strikes on him, and runner on second. He hits a double and ties the game. We go into the bottom of the 7th inning, and Sean Moss makes 2 phenomenal defensive plays at third base, and we ended up going into extra innings, and we scored 3 runs and held them in the bottom of the 8th to win the game 7-4 and to win Norway's 20th and final state championship. And
oh my God, Coach!
Kind of ironic
movie stuff.
Kind of ironic. The assistant coach that I had with me that season was one of my former students at Belle Plaine, and he was just graduated from a college, and he was looking for some coaching. He was my assistant, and he jumped up to go celebrate on the mound, and I got to put my arm out and stop him.
Not so fast, my friend. Not so fast. This is about the kids who played, not us. We didn't play it. We didn't play any.
But to be honest, I took my arm back down about 5 seconds later, and we both ran out there and celebrated.
So it didn't last that long.
It didn't last as long. I only had 1. Coach Vanskoy had about 18,
Oh, my God.
Hey,
20 state titles. That's amazing. And I think, I don't know if it's true, but the school they merged with, have they ever won a state title since then?
They have not. They've had some very good teams. I don't know, Quigs, are you backfiring there?
Yeah, I've been back.
I'm getting some feedback from, I think, your computer.
Yeah, you got something going on, Quig. We just get you.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, they've not won a state championship. They've had some really good teams, and they've made it to the state tournament. But to me, that's not a failure to them in merged schools. It's just that tough to win a state championship. Just like it's tough to win a World Series. Look at how many wild card teams have been the World Series champions. It's not always the best team that wins record wise.
All right, who did Coach Vanskoy learn from? Was it Bernie Hutchinson? Did he win 7 of the titles?
Yeah, Bernie won 7 of the 18 or of the 19, and Coach won the other. He was Bernie's assistant for a few years.
Oh, okay. He learned under Bernie. Bernie won 7, and he won 12.
Correct.
And you won 1 as a head coach, man. Did he ever talk about Bernie? Was that one of his mentors, his champion?
Yes. Yep. He talked about him a lot. And one of the neatest things is that after the movie came out, Bernie Hutchinson came to Iowa for a day of filming. And you talk about me being a guy with eyes wide open with 2 great high school coaches right in front of me. And boy, I sat and picked their brain. It was a really special day.
Oh my gosh, 2 Hall of Famers. Are you kidding?
Yes.
How lucky and blessed were you? All right, we're going to talk about the movie and how you got it made and how long it took it made. But I want everybody to know you've got such an amazing story, a beautiful family, but your life has not been without heartache or tragedy. Gene, of course, when Gene passed, Kyle's father had a heart attack during the state title game, and you lost a member of the film crew doing the movie.
Yeah.
Did you count on your faith, family, friends during that time? And talk about those deaths how you handled that.
Absolutely. I was blessed to have 2 parents. very Christian people that I was born and raised with faith as a main part of my life. And, doesn't make it easier, but it helps, and then when Gene died, I really struggled. And I told that story about how I didn't handle that well.
Right.
But it did prepare me better when my grandpa Lee died, passed away, my senior year in college. And but you talked about one that was really tough, and it's something that I think needs to be shared. We were filming on the third to the last day of the movie. It took us 6 weeks of filming. We filmed 6 days a week. We had Mondays off, so that's not typical in Hollywood. But we were on a smaller budget, and the Friday of the last weekend of filming, we were filming the parade scene. You know how the parade scene where they walk with the state championship trophy on the fire truck and all that. And they were using a helicopter that day to film that scene. And we brought in a helicopter pilot that was from Iowa, but we had the Hollywood cameraman that knew how to be out on the boom, and he was trained in filming from a boom outside of the helicopter. And then Tony Wilson, who was the dream behind the movie, the final season, he and I became best friends. I signed a movie contract in 1992. We filmed the movie in 2006, so it wasn't easy. And so we're filming that scene. Coach Vanscoy and I weren't to show up until noon that day because they didn't need us for that filming. And when we arrived on set that day at noon, I heard one of our production assistants on the walkie-talkie, and all of a sudden he goes, "Oh my gosh." And I looked at him. I said, "Travis, what's the matter?" He goes, "Our helicopter just went down." Moments later, they hit a hot guide wire from the road to the house, and the cutter didn't work, or something happened with the cutter. It didn't cut it, and the helicopter went down. The pilot lived. Tony Wilson, my best friend, who is a producer, he lived, but we lost the Hollywood cameraman that day. And I remember when we got on set, we had 150 people in Norway at the high school field, filming this movie. Sean Astin got them all together and said a prayer for everybody. Being around all these Hollywood people for 6 weeks, you don't necessarily know what their faith is and what they're all about. But to watch Sean grab everybody and everybody bowed their head in prayer was amazing. Well, I rushed off to the hospital, and that day I got to the ER with emergency room in Iowa City, and I was sitting there with Tony's wife, and the doctor came out and told us, said, "We don't know if Tony's going to live through the evening." He did. Then he'd come out the next day and he said, "Well, I don't know if Tony is ever going to be able to walk again." He did. 6 months later, the doctor said, "Well, Tony, I know you're a distance runner, but I don't think you'll ever be able to run again." 5 years later, Tony ran a 5K race in Des Moines. Tony is a very faithful, God-loving man, and it was power of prayer that got him through that and got him to where he's now working on other films to this day, and really having a positive impact on a lot of people's lives.
Oh my gosh, Tony Wilson was the first one to approach you in person about making the movie, and you said he's the most unforgettable character I've ever met.
Yep.
Wow. Well said, Ken.
He's a great man. One of the quick story, Tony followed my team that whole summer. I didn't know that he was following us, but the Des Moines Register, which is a big paper in Iowa, they sent a feature writer to come out and follow me around that whole summer. So he would come to majority of our practices. He was at every game. As you saw in the movie, he would ride the bus. He and I became very good friends. And right before the state championship, he wrote a 7-page spread in the Des Moines Register, not in the sports section, just in the regular paper, and just featured everything about us. And so Tony read that, and he said, "If this team wins that state championship game, I'm doing a movie over this story." Now you go back to my book. You go back to my book, Heading Home for Home, my journey from Little League to Hollywood. The ghostwriter on that, ghostwriter, you don't have to give their names, but I put it on there. It says Ken Fusen. You know who he was in real life? He was a newspaper reporter. He had just gotten laid off at the Des Moines Register, and he helped me write that book. So,
Oh, what a beautiful thing! I'm glad you mentioned that, Ken.
Yep.
I meant to do that, but thank you for doing that.
Yep.
That's amazing. 14 years to make the movie. It's almost like the Rudy Rudiger story. It took him 12, 14 years to get his movie Rudy made. Sean Astin played both of them. We're gonna get Sean on, but he got down on his knee when you first met Sean Astin, bowed toward you, and he stood up, grabbed you by the shoulders, and said, "You, Kent Stock, have been in my head for a year."
That's
Wow.
right.
Rudy been in Sean Astin's head for a year. Rudy, talk about that first meeting and some of the great cast that you had from Powers Booth to Tom Arnold and Larry Miller, one of the funniest guys, I guess, in the movie.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the movie and how hard it was, but how satisfying it was.
It was amazing. 14 years, there were many years where I thought this would never get done. I switched jobs, moved to a different city, and all of a sudden Tony would find me, and I was a principal of a middle school over in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and my admin would say, "Kent, there's some Tony Wilson on the line." Oh yeah, patch him through, but he had the very first script was 100% true. Nobody from Hollywood came calling. Fast forward about 8 scripts later, where it was 75% true, 25% Hollywood embellishment. That's when David Mickey Evans read the script and he said, "I want to be the director of this movie." I've been speaking for 16 years, motivational speaking for 16 years. I asked this question: has anybody in this audience ever heard the name David Mickey Evans? Not one person has raised their hand. And I said, but every one of you will know his greatest work. He was the writer and director of the movie Sandlot. And then all the hands go up. Everybody's read it.
Right.
So David read it and he goes, "I want to be the director of this movie." Second person to read it was Sean Astin. He read it and he said, "I want to play Kent Stock." Well, then we got the ball rolling. That's when things started fast forward, and we raised all the money to film the movie locally here in Iowa, and it just took off. And then, like you said, we got, Powers Booth, Rachel Lee Cook, Larry Miller. One of the funniest guys was Jimmy Gammons. Jimmy Gammons was in some great baseball movies, like You May Run Like Dorn, or You May, some of those movies. And we did a cast and crew and an investor party, and they made him get up and recreate that scene. I forget the name of the movie, what it was, but he recreated that scene, and the place just brought the house down. Between Jimmy Gammons and Larry Miller, two of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life. But
oh my gosh,
it was awesome. But one last thing, when I first met Sean Astin, that was true. He got down on one knee and he said, "You've been in my head for a year." They study the people that they're going to play, and they try to look. Right. He knew stuff about me that I didn't even know about me, But I remember the one thing he said to me. He says, "Kent, this movie is going to set a record." And I said, "Really? What record's that?" He goes, "Where the real life character is better looking than the actor."
Oh my gosh. What a story, Kent. Man, just a beautiful, beautiful thing. How is your family? How's wife Laura and your daughters Kendra and Kylie doing?
Lori's doing amazing. We just got back from a 2 weeks in Florida for a little mini vacation. The first week we flew Kendry and Kylie. They're 23 and 25 years old. And you never know when that's the last, they both have serious boyfriends. So you never know when it's the last time where it'll just be the four of us. And we just had an amazing week. And just to, it's fun to have an adult kids. I miss the days when they were younger, but you do all you can as a dad, trying to be a mentor and a role model to them so that they grow up and make good decisions. And to be able to spend a week like we did at January 20th to the 27th, and just to see them as young adults flying in their careers and doing great things, just makes you, as a dad and a mom, our heart is just filled.
Yeah, wait till you have grandkids, though, Ken. That's when, you can give them back and spoil them and have all your fun with them. Well, I want to thank you for doing this, Ken. You're really very interesting. I loved both the movie and the book. You've got an amazing story, and maybe we can do it again soon sometime.
That would be great. And thanks to our great connector, Phil Quigley, for hooking us up.
Yeah.
And if
we're doing
anybody,
things great.
yeah, and if anybody ever wants to reach out to me at all, they can go through you. But my email is kent@kentstock.com. It's simple.
Well, and get the book, Heading for Home. Kent Stock,
That's right.
Ken Fusen. Beautiful story. Thanks, Ken. God bless you, bud. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank
See
you,
you, buddy.
guys.
Thanks.
We'll
So
see
long.
ya.
So long.
Appreciate it.
See you, Coach. All right. Wow. It was amazing, Hobbs.
Exactly.
Wasn't it? Beautiful story like that. Get the book, watch a movie on Amazon. It's free. You can go to Amazon, the final season, and watch a movie about Kent Stock and the 20th state baseball high school champion.
Hey, Trip.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Trip.
Back.
You know one thing I was curious about in the movie, and as Kent said, there's they Hollywood movies as we know, but in the movie they had Coach Van Scoy getting upset when they were going to merge them with the local high school of Madison, and then
Right.
that's when he left. And it kind of sounded like Kent was saying that he left just to go to the Tigers. I think he went to like AAA as the pitching coach. But I was just curious about that. If I'm sure there was a lot of people upset because that's all that town knew.
Oh yeah, the movie was a lot about how upset they were about it.
Right.
They were all upset about losing the tradition, and I can understand why. Tradition's important. It builds a culture, and there was a culture there. Yeah, they didn't play many
Right.
sports, but it was an amazing culture that everybody rallied around. And you know how sports can bring communities together, and it takes a community to raise a child. And yeah, it was a great
Right.
story. I'm sorry you couldn't hook up time. But,
Appreciate it. I
come
got
on
to enjoy.
come on over Super Bowl, man. We'll be watching the Super
I'll
Bowl.
be there. That's coming this weekend, and
Yeah.
always good to see you, Coach Hobbs.
All right, Mr. Quiggs. Hey, you were asking a question about. I think he got a job offer with the Tigers in Class
Yes.
A ball. Yeah, he
Hey,
got
Class A. Okay.
Yeah, Class A.
Well, and one
he-
last thing, Trip, and I'll let you. I know you got to get off here, but and you probably already knew this. In the movie, the lawyer that came into town, she, to kind of see if they should merge or not, they had that as Kent's, romantic, romantic,
Yeah.
right, interest.
Yeah.
And actually, as you probably know, his wife Lori was a school teacher.
Right. That was 25. Yeah, that's 25% that was embellished.
Yeah.
They really got to throw some kind of love story into the great story, and try to, I don't know what they're trying to do, but they ruin half of them. Just tell the story, for crying out loud.
Hey,
Why does
Trip,
there got to be somebody behind it?
I'm 75% Hollywood anyway.
All right, Quig, I gotta go, man. See
All
ya.
right, brother.
All right.
Stay tuned for these great messages, everybody. Thanks for watching the show. Have a great sports weekend. We'll talk to you soon. So long.
There's a reason why Hill Kelly in Pensacola is the #1 selling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealer between Jacksonville and New Orleans. While other dealers have taken advantage of a competitive market with higher prices, Hill Kelly has discounted prices to the lowest of the year. And Hill Kelly in Pensacola won't surprise you with excessive charges beyond the selling price. Come see why people from Milton, Pace, Foley, Bay Minette, Daphne, Gulf Shores, Mobile, and beyond are driving to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to buy their next new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram. At Hill Kelly, the bottom line price and your satisfaction are what really matter. So before you sign, check the bottom line and make the trip to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to see what true local ownership can do for you. At Hill Kelly Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Highway 29 in Car City, Pensacola. Or shop online 24/7 at hillkellydodge.com. When it comes to bottom line pricing, nobody beats a Hill Kelly deal. Nobody.
Hey, Bill, some game, huh?
I haven't really noticed, Paul.
What? The biggest game of the year?
I've been looking over my insurance. Talk about problems I'm trying to figure out.
Well, do what I did. Call the Seiler Agency. They showed me what I needed and what I didn't. They even saved me money. Now, instead of worrying about my insurance, I can worry about the big game.
Contact the Seiler Agency at 476-7443 for all of your insurance needs. Your independent agent for home, auto, boat, RV, commercial, general liability, life, and sound investment strategies. Call 476-7443 today.
Step one works so hard to get you in the perfect big car. Looking for a better car buying experience? With a Step 1 Advantage from Buick GMC, Fort Walton Beach, and Pensacola, receive no-hassle market-based pricing or incentives by pre-ordering. Looking to sell or trade? Our dedicated team will even come to you. Plus, every vehicle sold at Step 1 supports local charities right in your neighborhood. Experience the Step 1 Advantage at Buick GMC, Fort Walton Beach, and Pensacola today.
Are you riding around in a filthy vehicle? Dirty car no more. Visit Ronnie's Car Wash today to get it shining in no time. They have 3 convenient locations with another coming soon. The unlimited monthly wash packages start as low as $14.95 per month with free vacuums, multi-purpose spray and towels. Visit them in Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, and soon Crestview. Don't wait, wash today. Be sure to see Ronnie's Car Wash on Facebook to see the latest specials and discounts. You'll be riding and shining in no time.
75 years of service in high tech today. It's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348. High tech is a term often applied to advanced services and products in today's marketplace. And today, glass is much more than a simple painted brittle, see-through stuff we hit baseballs through when we were kids. Glass is now a product with unique flexibility in both performance and application. And Pensacola Glass Company is growing right along. That's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348.
Did you know there's a place where you can get good neighbor service and surprisingly great rates on your home and auto insurance? Yep, and that place is, ta-da, State Farm. Here's the deal. State Farm agent Will Rentschler is your go-to agent in Pensacola, Florida for the service you deserve at the price that you want. So stop shopping around. State Farm agent Will Rentschler has you covered. Call 850-433-4678 for your surprisingly great rates today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Legal disclaimer, individual premiums will vary by customer. All applicants subject to State Farm underwriting requirements.